There's a peculiar paradox that plagues millions of people around the world, and that's the undeniable fact that despite knowing a toxic relationship is destructive, we often find ourselves inexplicably drawn to individuals who drain us, control us, and even hurt us. This is not just a matter of poor judgment or a lack of self-respect, but rather a symptom of a deeply entrenched, unconscious pattern that's rooted in some of our most fundamental insecurities, such as the need for validation, a desire to belong, or an obsession with past traumas. If you've ever found yourself in a pattern of relationships where you somehow keep being attracted to people who repeatedly let you down, emotionally or even physically, you're not alone in fact. This pattern is all too familiar to many of us, where we somehow feel an inexplicable connection to individuals who embody the very traits we claim to despise or fear. Today, we're going to explore the hidden forces behind this mystifying attraction, the unconscious patterns that fuel compulsive relationships, and the underlying insecurities that drive us to seek out toxic connections, and by doing so, uncover a deeper understanding of ourselves and the motivations that shape our choices, even when our intentions seem to be at odds with our well-being. We all think we're drawn to others because of their incredible qualities, but often it's the very issues we desperately need to confront within ourselves that we're actually trying to fill with these toxic relationships. In the depths of our psyche, these insecurities masquerade as an attraction to charming and charismatic personalities, but what we're really after is the validation we've been denying to ourselves. The moment we find someone who feeds our self-deception, the entire universe revolves around us, and we temporarily escape the crushing weight of our own fears and inadequacies. Toxic people often embody the darker aspects of our own psyche, which is precisely why we're so drawn to them. They provide a warped sense of familiarity and control, a way for our ego to assert dominance over the chaos. Our attraction to these toxic relationships is never about the other person, it's about the distorted parts of ourselves that we desperately try to suppress. When we get sucked into these toxic dynamics, it's because we've become adept at rationalizing our own self-destructive patterns, justifying them as love, loyalty, or obsession. When in reality, it's all just a desperate attempt to avoid the harsh truth about ourselves. When we allow ourselves to become entangled in a toxic dance, it's crucial to recognize that our initial attraction is often a desperate cry for validation, a subconscious attempt to fill the void left by our own unresolved insecurities. We're drawn to individuals who trigger deep-seated fears, those who seem to possess the very qualities we feel are lacking within ourselves, in a twisted attempt to compensate for our own perceived shortcomings. The more insecure we are, the more we seek to impose control on others, to manipulate their actions and reactions, ultimately reinforcing our own fragile sense of self-worth. But what lies beneath this compulsive need for validation and control? Often, it's the unspoken desire to prove our worth to ourselves, to quiet the internal voice that incessantly questions our value and relevance. Toxic relationships become a masquerade, a carefully crafted performance where we take on the role of the victim or the savior, all while masking our true motive, the desperate pursuit of self-vindication. By surrendering to our insecurities, we inadvertently create an environment where fear thrives, where our deep-seated doubts and anxieties drive us to seek out relationships that are, in reality, a thinly veiled attempt to escape ourselves. When we're drawn to individuals exhibiting unwholesome power dynamics, it's often a desperate attempt to rectify deep-seated insecurities that threaten to consume us, leaving us grasping for validation in the most unhealthy, albeit alluring, ways. You see, people who crave unhealthy power dynamics often have an insatiable hunger for control, fueled by a crippling fear of powerlessness that they've learned to suppress or deny, yet cannot shake the feeling that they are one misstep away from being completely insignificant. Unconsciously, we're drawn to individuals who can temporarily silence our debilitating self-doubt and ego-eroding fears, only to become enthralled by their own toxic behaviors, which we somehow rationalize as love or passion, when in reality, it's our desperate need for control that's driving the relationship. This morbid fascination with unhealthy power dynamics is also frequently a manifestation of our own unresolved emotional wounds. Ones that we've cleverly learned to bury beneath the surface, but which resurface in the form of our all-consuming attraction to toxic people, who represent the destructive, self-sabotaging tendencies we've never fully confronted or overthrown. What's truly fascinating is how our brains have a peculiar talent for justifying our most egregious behavior, convincing us that we're not the one who's enabling or perpetuating these toxic dynamics, that it's somehow the other person's responsibility to change or improve, while we remain firmly entrenched in our delusional state of denial. In many cases, our attraction to unhealthy power dynamics is also a clever ploy to avoid confronting and resolving our own insecurities, a way of procrastinating the inevitable yet necessary process of self-healing and growth, which, paradoxically, is the only true path to genuine, long-lasting fulfillment and happiness. When we find ourselves drawn to individuals who are toxic, manipulative, or abusive, it's often not about their charismatic charm or magnetic personality, but rather about our own deep-seated insecurities that have not been addressed. We may rationalize their behavior, but often the truth lies in our own desperate need for validation, which becomes an addiction, a compulsion that drives us to seek out people who will mirror our ego and inflate our sense of self-worth. At the heart of these compulsive relationships lies a fundamental fear, the fear of being alone, the fear of losing our sense of identity, and the fear of facing our own vulnerabilities. These relationships are often rooted in a twisted desire for control, where we become fixated on the idea of changing or saving the other person, rather than confronting our own issues and taking responsibility for our own healing. In the end, our attraction to toxic people is often a cry for help, a manifestation of our own self-deception and denial, a desperate attempt to outrun the pain and the shame that lies within us. Ultimately, the patterns of behavior that attract us to compulsive relationships are a reflection of our own unresolved wounds, our own unconscious patterns and insecurities, and until we face and confront these, we will continue to attract and become entangled in relationships that only serve to harm and undermine us. When we engage in relationships with toxic individuals, it's often because we're desperate for validation, a sense that our existence is worthy of attention and care. But beneath this need for validation lies a more sinister reality, a deep-seated insecurity that tells us we're not good enough, and that we need someone else to complete us. Our insecurities fuel our attraction to people who will manipulate and control us, because in those relationships, we feel a twisted sense of power and agency. We're attracted to individuals who embody traits that we feel are lacking within ourselves, often unconsciously choosing partners who are the exact opposite of our flaws. But what's driving this attraction is not love or genuine connection, but rather a desperate attempt to fill a vacuum within ourselves, to compensate for our own perceived inadequacies. Ultimately, the relationships we form with toxic individuals are a reflection of our own ego's need for control and dominance, a misguided attempt to mask our deep-seated fears of abandonment and rejection. And so, to break free from this cycle, we must first acknowledge and confront our own insecurities, our own vulnerabilities, and the self-deceptions that have led us to these toxic relationships in the first place. When we finally acknowledge the unconscious patterns driving our attraction to toxic people, we take the first step towards breaking free from the cycles of pain and self-destruction. Take a moment to reflect on whether your own insecurities may be fueling your relationships. I'd love to hear your insights in the comments below. If you're interested in unraveling more of the mysteries of the human psyche, be sure to subscribe for new content, and let's continue this journey together.